All right, everybody, it is time for another Sal's House and a very special episode this week because the Buffalo Bills are playing the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Divisional Round Playoff. All the talk, way too much talk this week, right? I've had to basically jump off social media this week because of how toxic everything has been between Ravens fans and Bills fans. I never wanted to get into it. Basically just wanted to focus on football as much as possible. And we are here finally on a Friday able to do that. All the Jerry Coleman stuff that's going on. Giving this guy attention, all that. It's ridiculous. And you have these two fan bases that really been going at it for the whole year between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen for the MVP. So it's just kind of ratcheted up. I'm just thankful we're here ready to talk football. And we're going to do that with a guy who talks football and shares a lot of stories. One of the best in the business at doing that. Tyler Dunne's going to join me here in just a moment here on Sal's House. I want to thank all my sponsors as usual. Listen, Sports City Pizza Pub. I was there last week, watched some games, had some pizza, had some wings. I brought the Denver Broncos radio crew to Sports City Pizza Pub. And so Susie Wargin, who's the sideline reporter for the Broncos, said to me afterwards, she said, Sal, I can't believe all of us ate all that pizza and wings for under $200. She said that to me. It was amazing. I said, that's Buffalo. That's what we do here. So that was very cool. Go on in and watch all the games this weekend. You never know who's going to show up. Maybe I'll be there as well. Sports City Pizza Pub, 1407 Niagara Street. Want to thank, of course, TSE, Total Sports Entertainment. Listen, they have so much going on right now at tscbuffalo.com, where they have all these private signings and public signings. We've been doing shows out there, all your sports memorabilia. And of course, every week that this goes on, even make some of that memorabilia even more special and more opportunities for you to collect some of their memorabilia. Herbal IQ, 6055 Transit Road. By the way, TSC Buffalo, if you want to head over and check them out online, it's tscbuffalo.com. But Herbal IQ, they are the place that you need to go for your it's New York State's licensed dispensary. So check them out online, check them out in store as well. Like I said, 6055 Transit Road today. All right, if you're listening to this on a Friday and you didn't wait too long, I'm going to be out at Herbal IQ with my man Maniac from Trainwreck Sports. He's going to have some mini golf set up for you to win some stuff. And we're going to be talking football, talking about the divisional round, and talking all about what's going on Sunday between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. All right. Bring in right now my good buddy Tyler Dunne from GoLongTD.com. What's up, buddy? How are you? Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday, Sal. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. And I feel like you set the tone for this conversation. You set the tone for Bills Ravens right there, because I immediately want you to replace myself with Jerry Coleman for Sal's house. I wish that he was at Sal's house.
Yeah.
And you could have like a death match, right? Maybe I can play Mills Lane and officiate. Maybe an ear gets bitten off. I think that's how we have to settle this thing.
So, well, for me though, I tell you, Eric Wood invited him on his podcast. Everybody kept asking me all week, we're gonna have this guy on. I'm like, I don't want to amplify the guy. I just don't want to amplify him. Like I want to leave him where he is and he can continue to do his thing. I don't want to talk about him. I have seen some of the DMs he sent some Bills fans and especially some female Bills fans. And I'm just like, come on, this is gross. What are we doing here? Right. And like, I'm not going to give that guy I'm not going to give any attention to him. And, just talking about people's looks and things like that. But either way, I'm giving him even more.
And here we are talking about him right at the top.
That's what happens with this toxicity that's happened. Have you seen it too between Ravens fans and Bills fans? Just the toxic nature of this week and how it's gone, and especially on the heels of Josh versus Lamar all year.
Yeah, I guess. With Jerry Coleman stuff notwithstanding,
right.
The animosity between Bills fans and Ravens fans, I kind of have a different take. I kind of love it. I kind of like the fact that we've got some fans going back and forth. It's a real rivalry. Give me that. It's like a throwback to, Bills Dolphins way back in the day. Think about those Bills teams winning the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. And granted, Twitter wasn't around, but man, the fan bases couldn't stand each other, from what I'm told from my elders. And I think that's a good thing. To an extent, right? There's always a line and it can get crossed. And you just referenced one line crossing that is a bit too far. But I think that, this game matters 100 times more than any random September Bills Titans game. Whatever, pick your regular season game. Yeah. Like what happens Sunday night at Highmark Stadium, legacies are going to be defined for all parties involved, right? Lamar, Derrick Henry, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh. It's why we spend so much of our lives writing about football, talking about football. I'm excited for it. So hey, if there's some back and forth and it gets a little tense, bring it on.
Would you agree? I've said all week that the legacy part is absolutely true. There's four main characters here, as you just mentioned, the two quarterbacks and two head coaches. John Harbaugh's already a made man, right? He's won a Super Bowl. If the Ravens lose, it goes on Lamar, right? Like, oh my God, here he is again. Even if he plays well, which will help him, there's going to be this thing about him not being able to perform in the playoffs. If he doesn't play well and they lose, then absolutely going to be heightened. On the other side, it's the other way around because Josh Allen has actually played well in the playoffs and the Bills have lost, and that's fallen at Sean McDermott. If the Bills lose, it's really open season on McDermott. Would you agree with how those two sides are so different?
Yeah, I think you just laid it out perfectly, Sal. Look, Lamar Jackson is probably going to win his third MVP, right? I think it should be Josh Allen, and I'm not just pandering. I mean, we see it every day what he's done. It kind of goes beyond the statistics, how he's lifted up this entire team. But judging by the All-Pro voting, Lamar Jackson will likely be the MVP. And all right, that's great. But if he loses this game to the Bills in sub-zero wind chill, I don't think many people will care. It will be a pretty hollow event at NFL Honors. Like he'll be on the red carpet and it'll be celebrated, and we'll all kind of look at Lamar Jackson and think, yeah, but you fell short again. And he knows that. That's the thing. I mean, Lamar knows better than anybody that his legacy is going to be defined in a game like this. And Sean McDermott knows that his legacy is going to be defined in a game like this. I mean, I sat down in his office for an hour recently. He gets it. He knows that everybody in this city and beyond that supports the Buffalo Bills wants him to bring this team to the Super Bowl. And if you look throughout NFL history, my podcast co-host Bob McGinn, he's covered the NFL since 1979. He went through, that all of NFL coaches throughout history. I was kind of blown away by this. Only 5 head coaches have stayed with the team and won a Super Bowl beyond year 7. So think about it. Like you get hired by a team, you get to year 7, only 5 have then won a Super Bowl. So Sean McDermott has been amazing. Think about where this team was under Rex Ryan. We both covered it. It was a total clown show in every conceivable way. He was needed then, but I think that Sean McDermott would even tell you, yeah, they know the expectation that this is a team that can win it all. And you look at how these playoff games have ended. Josh Allen, pristine, playing out of his mind. There's going to be a lot of pressure on this defense against Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Ty Dunne joining me here, golongtd.com. Tyler, you are someone who I think that, people understand what you do. You bring people's stories out, and you're a great storyteller about other people's stories, right? If that makes sense, how I want to say that. Why has that been your path? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a radio guy and I love talking about people's stories. That's great, but I'm not a long form writer. That's not what I do. I got into this business to talk on the radio. That's what I want to do. Why did you choose the path to do deep dives into people's stories and bring them out?
Man, that's a great question. It's all I've ever wanted to do, Sal. I mean, growing up in Western New York, went to Ellicottville. Hell, I remember working at the Olean Times-Herald as early as I could. I've always wanted to cover sports, particularly the NFL. Spent a couple summers out there covering Packers training camp in college, going to Syracuse like you, working at the daily newspaper. And then I think, to answer your question, it probably would have been when I'm at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, covering the Packers, and you do a little bit of everything. Podcasting was in its infancy, but we did that. Game stories, sidebars, columns, and feature stories. And I think that those light bulbs really started going off when I'm, hanging out with Forrest Gregg in Colorado Springs for a piece, and Bart Starr down in Birmingham, Alabama, and then even Brett Favre. I went to Favre's house for a story at that point. Nobody had really heard from him. Nobody knew what the relationship was like between him and the team. And I think that's just sitting down with people at length and having a conversation, not an interview, not an interrogation, just a genuine back and forth. Mm-hmm. It just felt like this is what I have to do all of the time, as much as possible. That this is an opportunity to kind of show a different side of the game. I mean, we all watch the games on Sunday. We all punch in our fantasy football lineups, place bets. And I feel like as that has kind of expanded, beyond our wildest imaginations, the actual stories that these guys have kind of gets lost. We kind of, by and large, forget that they're human beings. They go through the same trials and tribulations that everybody does in everyday life. And I think that these players, they love sharing their story. They love sitting down and talking for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours over dinner. And I think that there are fans out there, readers out there that maybe want to hit pause on life and learn a little something behind the curtain, which I didn't know. So, I'm at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the Buffalo News, then Bleacher Report for 4.5 years, when Bleacher Report kind of got rid of all the writers and I was figuring out what to do with my life. I didn't know, like, starting a Substack, starting golongtd.com, if it would catch on, if people wanted to, quit scrolling around on Instagram, quit scrolling around on Twitter to read the story and learn something. But that was the plunge. That was the bet. I figured I'd just do what I love to do. If people wanted to subscribe and read and feed our family, all the better. And thankfully, and I'm unbelievably blessed, fans have done that, especially here in Western New York.
Yeah, I'm glad you said especially here in Western New York. I wanted to actually follow with, like, is it different here in Buffalo telling those stories because this is a place where they're so passionate about their players and their team, and it's not New York, Chicago, LA, Philly, these big markets where maybe they don't get, of course, Josh Allen gets talked about on the national stage, but you don't get some of the, I guess, lesser known players as propped up as you do in other cities. Is it different here in Buffalo when you tell those stories and the reaction?
Good question, Sal. Yeah, I think so. And, being in Green Bay, being in Western New York, very similar, right? Passionate fan bases that feel a connection to the team. And it is different. I mean, if a team in New York loses, yeah, fans are going to be pissed off and they're going to let you know they're pissed off, but there's distractions. There's other things to do. If you're in Miami, hell, you go to the beach the next day, right? I can still remember going to a Tampa Bay Buccaneers playoff game. My brother was a Bucs fan growing up, and we saw them lose to Washington in a wild card game. Crazy game. I mean, Edel Shepard seemed to
just like this week
right in front of us, right?
Right. That's right.
Similar, yeah. And I remember the Bucs lost, and we're walking out, and fans really weren't that upset. At least the ones that we were walking out with. It's like, why would they be? They can go to the beach the next day. Like, here, I'm looking out my window. We've got like 2+ feet of snow in the greater Boston Colton region of Western New York, and it's going to be freaking cold. And the connection between the city and the team, they're one and the same. It's not cliche. It's real. It's not like that anywhere else. So to have that opportunity to just sit down with players, hear their stories and share that, I think it is different. I mean, there are countless guys. The one that jumps to the forefront of my mind is Damar Hamlin.
Yep.
So we got wings at Elmo's ahead of his rookie year. I don't think anybody beyond his immediate to extended family even knew who Damar Hamlin really was at that point. Bills fans had a little bit of an idea, maybe some Pitt Panther fans, but his life story was gripping. More than half of the people he grew up with dead, and he was open about everything. And his dad going to prison through the formidable years of his childhood. It was some deep stuff. Now, I wrote the story and I put it out, and some people read, but not a lot, because not a lot of people knew him. And then when he dies and comes back to life on a football field and people want to learn who Damar Hamlin is, that becomes our most read story at Go Long ever at the time.
Amazing.
So I think that there is that strong desire to learn who these players are as people, as human beings.
And I think as a professional, when you do that early on for a guy like Damar, and then he has that, what happened to him, whether that's unbelievably, tragic, and of course we're glad that he's okay now story, or someone winds up doing incredible, winning Super Bowls or whatever, you have that baseline where you've already talked to the person, you've already shared their story, and now you can kind of refer to, and you can kind of tell that journey even better from your perspective, because you got to know them. You got to know Damar's rookie year before everything, and then everything happens. He becomes this guy who's out at the ESPYs and the NFL honors, and everybody knows all the advocate for change he's been with around the country for heart and AED and CPR. And now, but you've already kind of told the backstory. You can advance it even more.
Totally. I mean, and that's the thing. As he is becoming this celebrity, right? He's at the white party with Michael Rubin and all these celebrities at the ESPYs. He's meeting with the U.S. president, for crying out loud. All of this stuff. It's and it's all over Instagram. It's all over the news. And I feel like even then, people maybe get a little twisted image of who Damar Hamlin is. So that's why we caught up again this season for a story at Go Long. And he put it this way. He's like, yeah, man, I was busting my ass behind the scenes, like through that all. And I kind of knew that because I knew what led to him even getting to Pitt and get into the NFL and having that opportunity. So yeah, there definitely is the man behind the Instagram post. And that's kind of the charge here. It's like learning who you are beyond the 3 hours on a Sunday, beyond social media, because there's so much more behind the curtain that is the NFL that is just untold. Sadly, right? I grew up reading Sports Illustrated, Sporting News, wanting to learn who these people are and learn about the game and the inner workings of teams, the good, the bad, the ugly, all that stuff. I feel like that has kind of been siphoned out of the discourse. Twitter's great in a lot of ways. It does help me kind of reach an audience for sure. So I'm not just going to, I should say X. I'm sorry. I'm not just going to crap all over X. There's a lot of good there, but I feel like perception becomes reality too often and we kind of lose the substance of the sport.
Let's talk about Sean McDermott. Before I do that, though, I want to remind everybody, thank you very much, TSCbuffalo.com. Go there now. They have a 45% off site-wide sale, all your memorabilia, everything going on this weekend. Obviously, Bills Ravens divisional round, TSCbuffalo.com. And, when you go there, there's so many different like signings, public signings, private signings, things like that you can get into. So check them all out, TSCbuffalo.com. Sports City Pizza Pub, 1407 Niagara Street. We got to go there and get some wings and pizza, me and you. Wings, I know you like your wings. I mean, Sports City, man, they have amazing different flavors, all different flavors, plus all the beer you can have on tap, different kinds, and the best place to watch all the games. I mean, it's like scoreboards everywhere. It's really cool. Sports City Pizza Pub. And of course, Herbal IQ. Once again, everybody, I will be at Herbal IQ on Friday afternoon, New York State licensed dispensary, 6055 Transit Road in Depew. Come on by, check out Maniac from Trainwreck Sports, myself. We'll be doing some stuff and saying hi to people. So make sure you check them out. Herbal IQ. All right. We know that, I want to rewind a little bit. You wrote the story about Sean McDermott last year that had a very, very different reaction from no matter where you went and who you talked to, right? In some places, incredibly visceral, right? I think that would be a fair characterization. In some places, people who wanted to tell you, yes, that's right. This is why the guy, he shouldn't be the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And look at all these different things and these stories and these backstories. He'll never be the one to take him to a Super Bowl. What did you learn about Sean McDermott after that, and then meeting him and talking with him before we get to the latest piece that you brought about him? You know what I mean? So if you write the piece and then you meet with Sean, I believe around the combine time, what did you learn about Sean in between that period?
Sure. Yeah. You mentioned a story written last year. I'm like, you want to talk about the Quentin Morris story where we got together at Barbell? Yes. Yeah. That had a reaction in Buffalo and beyond. And just real quick, like as always, I just try to talk to as many people as I possibly can for one of these team deep dives. Did the same thing on the Dave Gettleman Giants as that thing was kind of careening, and the Mike Zimmer Vikings. A bunch of stories come to mind. The Packers obviously checked back in on them a bunch. So with the Bills, their season wasn't going as planned, hovering around 500. And, banging their head against the wall every January. I think that there was a curiosity, to put it mildly, locally, like what in the hell is going on here? So yeah, I'm going to talk to as many players and coaches and execs as I possibly can who have kind of passed through that building. And at the time, like physically, I'm not there every day like you guys, but I've got a phone. I'm traveling the country. I am meeting with a lot of these people. So look, I'm just trying to help explain how this game works. There was some questions when it came to the head coach and the team. What's going on here? A lot of people had a lot to say, and a lot of players actually had a lot of good to say too. I'm thinking Tywan Jones, Isaiah McKenzie, Lee Smith, Patrick DeMarco. I mean, there were a lot of guys in that story that had a lot of good things to say about Sean as well. So write that three-parter. The reaction is what it is. The Bills get hot, obviously. They win every week up until the divisional round, the game that we're talking about right now, this point of the season. And yeah, I mean, I should backtrack. It was the day after I wrote that series that I heard from Sean. And I'll keep the contents of our conversation private, but I don't think he'd mind if we talked about it to an extent here. And it was pleasant, cordial. There's been times in the past where you write something critical and you might hear from a coach or a player or a PR department, and it's mother F this, mother F that, name. It wasn't any of that whatsoever. It was fine. All he said was, let's get together after the season, sit down and get to know each other to an extent. So that's what we did. And I heard from the Bills ahead of the combine. We got together in Indianapolis. It was a long conversation. Hell, it might have been hour and a half, 2 hours. We didn't even talk about the story, right? I mean, he didn't bring up parts of it he didn't like. None of that. We genuinely got to know each other.
Yeah.
Talked about our kids, talked about our families. It was kind of comical. At one point, I'm like, yeah, you know, he asked where I lived. I said here in Boston, and he had mentioned, you know, North Collins, kind of passing through there. And I'm like, yeah, you see this scar on top of my head? That was our rival back in basketball. And when I was at Ellicville, and a player for North Collins, Scott Goodhart, if you're listening, I don't forget, man, came down with an elbow on top of my head. And I went like this, and then I lifted my hand, and blood squirting out of my head like a water fountain. So I went to Holiday Valley. They had, they had some immediate care there because of the ski slopes and everything.
Yep.
And they put 8 stitches in my head. It was a winter weekend game, so halftime went long. Came back, had the game of my life. You know, my brother's filling in for me at point guard when I'm out. He's diving all over the place, and we came back and won the game. So he got a kick out of that. So we're sharing old, high school football stories and high school basketball stories.
Love it.
Yeah, it was fine. And I basically, in so many words, explained my profession and how I gravitate towards storytelling, like we kind of did here at the top of the podcast. And that to do my job to the best of my ability, it helps to talk to as many people as I possibly can. So of course, I would love to sit down with you anytime, with Brandon Beane anytime, players in your locker room, coaches, and learn. And since that point, I've been at One Bills Drive a ton. I've seen you there, obviously. Sat down with Brandon for a one-on-one in the spring. Several features throughout the season, like Rasul Douglas, Damar Hamlin, Ray Davis. I'll have a story on Ty Johnson here shortly after we record this. And I did sit down with Sean ahead of this playoff run, which I got to tell you, as you know, is unbelievably rare. Like, coaches are such creatures of habit. Mm-hmm. They usually don't have 5 to 10 minutes to chat, let alone an hour ahead of the playoffs. So it's a credit to Sean. I'm not just blowing smoke, man. I mean,
no, I get it.
The Bills PR department deserves a lot of credit here too for kind of building a working relationship, because I mean, there's teams, the Green Bay Packers, for example. I wrote a Bleacher Report story in 2019 on Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, Ted Thompson, how that thing blew to bits. Let's just say that the Packers did not deal with that situation in remotely the same fashion as the Bills did this one.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you what your relationship is with the Packers. Do you have one at all? Is it still very tough?
Well, I'm going to do my job. I'm still going to sit down with players for stories. There's always ways to do your job. And so, I mean, heck, I was out there in mid-November hanging out with Sean Ryan's house. I mean, he was everything we love about football, man. What a throwback. Kenny Clark, Evan Williams, and Leroy Butler, kind of the Hall of Famer meets the rookie. So you can do the job for sure. I mean, and it's up to that's their prerogative credential wise. That's fine. Teams can do whatever they want, but thankfully it's rare. And Go Long is pretty much credentialed by any team in the NFL. And like, you don't need a credential to do your job. I mean, you can pick up the phone, call somebody, you can get together with a player over dinner. There's a million ways to cover the NFL, but and look, I should say also, Sal, like this doesn't stop you from being critical. Like,
no, of course not.
I always will think with a clear conscience. Like, the Bills have been incredible this year. Like, they played really well. I think that Sean has coached really well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I want to ask you, like, okay, so from everything you heard from people about Sean and writing the story, and then you meet him, and then now when you watch this season unfold and you meet with him again and you do the story, how has Sean McDermott changed? Maybe even to kind of like going into a game like this, going into a situation like this Whereas maybe people don't realize people evolve. And has Sean evolved from what you've seen behind the scenes, I guess?
That's a great point, because it's like I'm thinking of Aaron Rodgers in the past. I don't think he evolved. I don't think Aaron Rodgers looked in the mirror and did any self-reflection. And I mean, and Sean would be the first to say, and he opened our Q&A with this. It's all at the site, golongtee.com. He's like, look, I don't want this to be like I'm one person, story comes out, I'm another person, like in the course of a year. But then he also brought up several ways in which he has evolved as a coach, as a man, like anybody, always trying to strive to be a better person and better at his job. And so, yeah, I think at this point of a season, and look, this isn't coming from Tyler Dunne or any report. This is from assistants who used to work with the head coach day to day, players who worked with the head coach every day. Like, it would get tight right now. There would be nerves. You could feel it. It was palpable into some of these playoff games. And then what happened late in these games, like that tightness manifested in not productive ways on the field, whether it was a coaching decision, whether it was a player screwing up. It's hard to quantify, right? Like football is a human game. I know we lean on EPA and DVOA and metrics, but at the end of the day, it's humans. It's 22 players colliding 150 times a game. And how you coach and steer those humans one way or the other will get you to the Super Bowl or not. So to answer your question, yeah, I think he has evolved for good. He brought up a conversation that he had with Cale Sanderson, the former Olympic wrestler who now coaches Penn State's wrestling team. And this past year, he told Sean that he became a better coach, paraphrasing here, when he realized that being a coach isn't all that important, right? Like, and Sean, he said, well, like, that was an enlightening moment, is what he called it. To kind of just be a dad for these guys. Like, what can I be for this player in this moment? Like, what do they need for me? Fill in some gaps, stand in some gaps, and allow the personalities of these players to be authentic and shine through. And I do think, like, the culture can kind of run itself at this point. Like, when back in 2017, on the heels of the Rex madness, like, yeah, you needed more of a disciplinarian. You needed rules to be followed and things to be a little more militaristic. But 8 years into it, I think that there's a lot of veterans in that room who can run the locker room themselves and be out there. I was talking to Dawson Knox this week, and I asked him, like, you guys are talking about treating this game like any other game. Is that what you see? And he's like, yeah, we're trying. Like, you put yourself in the right mind space and all of that. And he admitted, like, years past that maybe there were some nerves within that locker room ahead of these games where now they've done the preparation, they've done the work, and you can see the types of plays that you saw against Denver where Josh Allen is freelancing and finds Ty Johnson in the back of the end zone.
Yeah. I mean, I love, yesterday we talked to Dawson, and he had a great response of nervous versus excitement. He said, well, there's a fine line. If I'm nervous, it's because because I'm thinking about screwing up. Right. And like that can manifest itself into a bad play. If I'm excited, I'm thinking about all the good things we can do and how that can go. So I do think that's really interesting there. All right. So throughout, I'm going to get into the matchup real quickly before we end. But before I do that, besides the Bills, what are maybe one or two, or maybe do you have a favorite story you've written, a favorite person? I know the Eric Kramer one is really big for you. I know that I've seen that over time, but is there a favorite one that you've done, or maybe a couple that, if you get a chance to say, like, you know what, I want to just tell people you should really probably go and read that.
I appreciate that, Sal. Yeah. I think this past year, because this is somebody that a lot of your listeners will remember well. I chatted with Zay Jones for a couple hours down in Jacksonville, and going down there, I think there is this elephant in the room. I mean, he knows, and I know, and everybody involved knows, like, what we're probably going to talk about at some point in this conversation is the night in LA that you tried to throw yourself out of a window, whatever it was, 30 floors high, and his brother saved his life. And it's really haunting when you look at the images from that night. I mean, the hole in that window was big. I mean, his body is sticking out of it.
Oh, geez.
And so, I think going into that, you're not just going to start a conversation with that scene, with that night. You have to somehow build up a a sense of trust and comfort with any player. So we talked probably for about an hour before that even came up. And then when it kind of organically came up in conversation, he didn't hold back, and he explained everything that led to that moment, everything after that moment, and how he has kind of grown and evolved over time. And man, it was chilling at times, and it was inspiring for the most part. I will never forget that chat with Zay Jones down in Jacksonville. So yeah, that's right up there. I definitely gravitate toward those, the human condition for sure, right? Like,
Yeah.
What makes these guys tick? And the Eric Kramer one is another, like, what this guy went through. Obviously, former quarterback. He's still the Bears' single season passing record holder, which is nuts, from 1995. But yeah, he tried to take his own life. He shot himself in the mouth and survived. And that wasn't even the craziest thing that happened to Eric Kramer. He recovers from that obvious cognitive damage, but nobody, like, even as he physically recovered, nobody could really see or understand what he was going through with his brain. I mean, he basically was like a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and nobody could really tell unless you really knew Eric Kramer. So what happened? A former friend of his, Courtney Baird, coerces him into a sham marriage and takes complete advantage of Eric Kramer. Between her and the fees from lawyers and everything that followed, I mean, he probably lost about $700,000.
Oh, jeez.
So once the lights kind of came on, he was able to get himself out of that situation with Anna Durgan, who, I mean, she's the hero of that story. This will be a movie one day, without a doubt. It's unbelievable. And he's been fighting the conservatorship program and trying to clean that best he can. He's been a voice for everything out there in California. He's written a book. Can't recommend the book enough. And actually, I believe there'll be a podcast coming out on all of this, like in serial format, which will be must listen. But yeah, I mean, the Eric Kramer series, that's from a few years ago. That'd be right up there as well.
You doing your happy hour tonight? And what do you? I know you do those on Fridays usually, right?
Yeah, you know what? We've kind of been mixing it up here and there.
Okay.
I will say Saturday night, I'll be at Fatty Beer in Orchard Park. I know you've got, I don't want to take people away.
No, you're great. We've done, I did a Sal's house at Fatty Beer downtown, actually. They're a friend of the program. So
great.
It's okay. Yeah. Tell everybody what you got. I have no problem with that. Go right ahead. What do you got going on? Tell everybody.
Yeah. So the Orchard Park location, I'll be posted up there, and just, if any readers, any subscribers want to come on by, I believe one of your co-workers, Jeremy White, may be swinging on through, and John Scott at Channel 2. We're going to do a little live podcast, throw some beers back with people, and watch Lions Commanders, and obviously talk about this matchup.
No, I love that for sure. Okay, so this matchup real quick. X's and O's wise, I mean, is it as simple as, okay, well, Bills could not let Derrick Henry run against them? I mean, it sounds like that, but how fascinated are you by this matchup and how the Bills, kind of the chess match, Taron Johnson, nickel, 4-3, you're a football guy. How cool is this?
Yeah, I get the argument on the latter point there. I get the argument for both, Sal. Like, I'd love to know where you stand on this, because you can bring in the linebacker to stop this running game, or you can just stay true to who you are. I mean, Taron Johnson has been a beast. He might be the best nickel corner in the business.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, do you change who you are because of the opponent, or do you say, hell no, we got here for a reason, we're gonna stand here with our guys? I that's where I was for most of the week. But the more, and this could be the paralysis by analysis, right? Like, we've got a whole week to think about this matchup. But right or wrong, the more I think about it, I'm like, man, I think you have to stop Derrick Henry first. Yeah, I think you got to fight. You got to bring muscle in. You got to try to take him away in the ground game and force Lamar Jackson to beat you when it's 0 degrees through the air.
I agree. And Lamar can, there's no doubt. But
right, and he could. He very well could do that.
The word I've used, probably overused this week, is control. You can't let Derrick Henry control the game. If he does, it's over. Like, if he's controlling the game, they can do a lot of different things on offense. If you make sure he doesn't control the game, you at least put Lamar in a situation where, sure, he can beat you, but maybe you get a chance if that ball's in the air or he's trying to do something, you can get to him, right? So I agree with you. I went back and looked, Tyler, 3-4 years ago when the Bills played this round against the Ravens. I understand that Taron wasn't the well, he was still a very good player at the time. He'd been in the league a couple of years. The Bills actually only played him less than 50% of the plays, actually. Or I think it was, I mean, it's like, I think it was, I have to go back and look. I think it was less than 50% of the time they did that, or around 50%. They played base defense. They played AJ Klein actually came in. Now that I remember, okay, AJ Klein came in for 32 snaps, and Taron Johnson was on the field for like less than 50. I mean, it was pretty even. So I think they could do something like that. I think they will match personnel.
That's a good find, Sal. And I think like this is probably the case against any team, but especially true with Baltimore. Like you just can't have no 60, 70-yard touchdowns. I think that
right.
Sean McDermott and his staff, they're going to do everything they can to just keep everybody in front of you, rally to the ball. If Derrick Henry runs for 6 yards every carry, I think they'd be okay with that, because that means you're going to have to piece together a 12, 13 play drive, which probably means you might get a sack along the way. You might have an offensive holding penalty along the way, something that puts you in a 3rd and long, something that gets you off the field, and hey, an interception or a fumble wouldn't hurt. I think that's probably the game plan. And that kind of fits into the identity of what Sean McDermott's defense has always been. At the same time, I'm thinking of Spags, right? I'm thinking of what's worked against Lamar and what's worked for the Chiefs. At times it's pressure, it's disguising, it's coming after you, It's being aggressive. So maybe that's the answer. I don't know. You know what? I think what this will come down to, it's going to come down to the Marvel characters. It's going to come down to Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. Whose superhuman talent makes the most superhuman plays, right? Like because both teams are way better than they were in week 4, and they've changed. I mean, got Taron Johnson and Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. They're not even on the field then. Kyle Hamilton has since moved back to safety.
No
both teams are way better. It's a coin flip of a game, but if Josh Allen goes out there, and he very well could do this, talk about not feeling pressure, that's Josh Allen. Like he is not going to have that heart rate spiking up and down. I think he'll be calm as calm can be. If he just goes out there and makes the types of plays we've seen all year, the 4th and 2 against Kansas City, the lateral against San Francisco, the throw to Keon Coleman against the Lions and against the Jets, that kind of stuff, I think, without turning it over, which he's done better than ever, the Bills win this game, right? I think that's what it comes down to in simplest form.
Yeah, I think any extra possession you give either side, right? And the Bills have been very good about protecting the ball and taking the ball away this year. So, I think that they can get 1 or 2 of those turnover, but also protect the ball, right? I mean, you don't want to give the other team an extra possession in this game. There's no doubt. It's all the old football cliches, but I think it really comes down to establishing the line of scrimmage in this game and not turning the ball over. It really does. And if you could do that, it'll go a long way. All right, let me thank my sponsors, and I'll let everybody hear from Tyler on where you can find all of his work. One more time, Sports City Pizza Pub, 1407 Niagara Street. Come on in. They're going to have all the games going on all weekend long. You got hockey, you got basketball, you got football, of course, wings, pizza, all the drinks you can get. Herbal IQ, 6055 Transit Road into PU. I'm going to be out there on Friday about 5 o'clock, joining my man Maniac from Trainwreck Sports. Got a lot going on out there. New York State licensed dispensary. And, of course, Total Sports Entertainment, TSC Buffalo, tscbuffalo.com. Make sure you head over there to 3170 Orchard Park Road in Orchard Park for all of your Buffalo Bills and other memorabilia, private signings, public signings. Thank you very much to all of them for allowing this particular show, and Tyler Dunne for coming in. And Tyler, you can tell everybody where to go for all your work.
Hey, I appreciate it. And by the way, Sal, I'm convinced you've cloned yourself. I think there are probably a dozen Sals running all over Western Europe. You are omnipresent, man. I don't know how you do it while raising a kiddo. It's impressive. When we were hanging out at that Sabre game, it was like fresh off. You flew across the country, right? Like, I'm like, how do you have any energy right now, Sal? It's amazing. So keep doing your thing. But yeah, go longtd.com. Yeah, a lot of coffee, right? Yeah. Same here. Yeah. Got the site. I've got a lot of Bills stories up, obviously. So you got to know where the bread is buttered, and the Bills fans have been incredible supporting. We're completely independent. We don't have any ads, any sponsors, just powered by the people 100%. And I'll have a story today, Friday, live on Ty Johnson. We chatted at length about his manifestation and his calm and his mindset. And really, I really believe the entire team, if they take on that kind of mindset in this game, they'll be in good shape, right? It won't be what we've seen this time of year out of this team late in games. It was really refreshing, and he was unbelievably open on everything that led to that touchdown, that moment in his career. So we'll have that up. And like I said, I'll be at the game Sunday covering
What
it.
time
and
at
it could
Fatty
be the
Beer
game of the
on
year.
Saturday?
Oh, yeah. So Saturday, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
But come in anytime.
Yeah.
We'll be posted up there around 7. The Orchard Park location. There's fatties everywhere, but we'll be there in OP. So, yeah, come on in and introduce yourself, and we'd love to have you go along.
Ty, thanks for doing this, man. Thanks for coming into Sal's house today.
Thank you, Sal. Appreciate the time.